Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let's talk about DACA. Donald Trump is ending DACA. This is the plan started under Obama in order to shield immigrant youth who were brought over illegally from deportations. They were brought here through no fault of their own. Many of them have no connection whatsoever to the places that they are going to be deported to. Some of those places are hostile to human existence. Don't matter. It's about 1 million people that may be potentially deported. It's even worse than that. How could it be worse than that? The information that was used to enroll into the program may now be used, potentially, to facilitate the deportation of those same people. If you're going to be mad at somebody, be mad at both. Be mad at both. Donald Trump told you exactly what he was going to do. The Republican Party is very clear on where they stand with the immigration thing. If you're going to be mad at somebody, be mad at both. If I stick my hands into an alligator's mouth and he bites me, it is not the fault of the alligator. Everyone understood what Trump was going to do on immigration. In no way did that change the behavior of the Democratic Party when they were running in the campaign. In no way did that change Obama's behavior and the prior administration. Because let's not pretend that he wasn't in a position to do anything about it. Let's start with Hillary Clinton. And again, I'm making this point. Think of all the things that got you into the position that you're in. Nearly losing to a socialist and choosing Tim Kaine is a bad choice. Cheating that socialist is a bad choice. Having this thing of pushing for the Trans-Pacific Partnership at the exact same time that Hillary Clinton is trying to distance herself is a poor choice. Having insurance rates go up is a poor choice. All of these things are poor choices. All of these things serve to undermine Hillary Clinton's campaign, and you could say the Democrats' bid for the office. That being said, you also have to understand this idea of tone deafness. Hillary Clinton was singing off-key as anybody could sing, and was completely tone deaf. And despite seeing the rumblings in the public, despite saying that she could not separate herself from Donald Trump regardless of what came out, regardless of what he said, regardless of what calamity he was in at that particular moment, she could not distance herself at any time. Didn't change her one iota. She looked at it as Donald Trump is a loaded gun, and if America knows what's good for it, it won't shoot itself in the face. It'll vote for me. Even if it hates my guts, even if it doesn't want to see me in this office, the last thing they want is Trump. And they chose Trump. They chose Trump. The Democrats were wrong. Running in a way that's completely arrogant and pays no attention to the public, as if the public is thankful in order to vote for you. It's like the public is doing, like you're doing the public a favor by putting your bid in for the presidency. You get people's vote when you represent their interests. And this is one of those really big caveats. I mean, this is not a caveat. This is really those big glaring issues with the Democratic Party on this front. Obama passed the Dreamers thing last year. In I think 2012 or 2013. At that point, he didn't have the numbers in Congress from a legislative standpoint to be able to do anything in the legislative branch. So the only powers that were available to him to do anything was presidential. That's all he had. That was all that was available. The Republican Party was against him and reflexively said no to each and everything that he put up for the past 4 years prior. There should have been no illusions that they weren't going to be able to work with the party. Obama created this distinction of dreamers, and he left those dreamers on the hook for the next maniac. And the next maniac is now in office. And yes, he could have done something. This is NPR. In an interview this week, Univision's Adriana Vargas asked the President Obama if in event Congress failed to pass immigration legislation, he could simply use his presidential power to give amnesty to the estimated 11 million people currently in the United States illegally. The president didn't exactly shut the door on that possibility, though he strongly suggests it was not a portal he wanted to go through. Probably not. This is Obama. I think that it's very important for us to recognize that the way to solve our problems has to be legislative. I can do some things and have done some things to make a difference in the lives of people, determining how our enforcement should focus. That's DACA. Essentially saying people are trying to say it's unconstitutional. It's not unconstitutional. He's telling them to focus on certain things and not on others. Focus on criminals first. It's just given a priority. It's presidential discretion. The problem is the president also has the discretion to get rid of that presidential discretion of the last president. Right now, we're focused on much more on criminals. We're focused on those who have endangered people or communities, and we've been able to provide help through deferred action for young people and students. The dreamers, who I've had a chance to meet with, and they're just incredible young people and great assets to the United States. Who's about to be deported? Who's about to be deported? Like I said, some of those people are going to places that they have no connection to at all. Some of those places, again, are hazardous to your health. You left them on the hook. You left them on the hook. And this last line explains it all and gets across the timidness associated with the presidency. So I'm not going to speculate on the House bill failing. I'm going to make sure I do everything to help it succeed. That's immensely disingenuous. You already knew that the House bill was going to fail. You already knew that the Republican Party chose not to work against you for the past 4 years prior. You already knew it. It wasn't like you just came into office and you were blindsided by it. You dealt with resistance going all the way through. You knew the House bill was going to fail. You knew that the only avenue was through the presidential power at that point. Now, even if you didn't go through and give blanket veto to 11 million people, fair enough, that's a heavy lift. You yourself created the distinction with the Dreamers, and it's understandable. They were brought here through no fault of their own. They shouldn't be punished or penalized for something that was no fault of their own. That makes perfect sense. Then you should have did something that was more lasting. This is not more lasting. The president could have passed a veto or given immunity to the Dreamers. They could have given immunity to the Dreamers. At the very least, you could give it and make that argument. The president has the capacity to pardon all of those people in the country illegally. He could say, yes, the Dreamers that are here illegally are now pardoned. Mind you, he could have said the same thing about pot. That's a completely different story. I'm just making a point. There's a timidness associated with the presidency of the last 8 years. And now that timidness is coming to bite this country in the ass. Democrats dropped the ball. This is why I'm saying blame both. Yes, you can blame the Republican Party. Fair enough. They are pulling the trigger on it in that sense. But understand what got you to that point that will allow them to pull the trigger. The party or the problem is both. It's not one or the other. The problem is both. The problem is both. You have, and I'll leave it at this, Hispanics, immigrants, blacks, gays, all of these groups who are considered to be minorities vote overwhelmingly Democrat. You would think that at the point where somebody is voting for someone, that those people who they're voting for would represent their interests. Representing the interests of the people who are voting for you. And no, I know these the immigrants themselves can't necessarily vote for you, but certainly they have family members, they have friends, they have people in their community who want them to stay in this country. They're rooted in this country. If you believed in them, if you wanted to represent their interests, meaning they're voting for you, the very least you can do is try to represent their interests. then you would have given him immunity. You would have pardoned him. You'd have given him a pardon. Even after knowing Donald Trump won the election, still didn't do it. So now those nice young kids are now going to be kicked out the country because the prior administration left a massive loose end. A massive loose end. It's amazing to me. It's not that I'm shocked by Donald Trump doing this. Of course Donald Trump was going to do it. The guy rode down an escalator starting his campaign off saying that Mexicans were rapists and drug dealers, and I guess some of them are good people. I guess. That gives you a certain perspective of the world of the person who would say something like that. So you knew what he was going to do when he got into that office. He talked about building a dumb-ass wall that was purely symbolic, just to create the situation of us and them. Of course he was going to kick him out the country. Of course he was going to do it. If you really cared about it. If you didn't want to just use the immigrant population as a political football. If you actually cared. If you actually had a core in that sense. Then you would have given him a veto. Or you would have given him a pardon. At the very least, again, the dreamers. You created the distinction yourself. That's the point I'm trying to make. If you're going to blame somebody, blame both. Blame the tepidness of one party, which is the point I continuously make. So tepid, in fact, that the moment that a Republican comes in, it's just easy to unravel one thing after the next. In this case, real world, affecting people. The ICE raids were bad enough. Now they're able to use, potentially, the people's information. They signed into a program believing that the federal government was going to do right by them. And it did not. It did not. Congress is 6 months. Is Congress going to do something in 6 months that it couldn't do over the past few decades? I'm immensely skeptical. So I'm going to put the articles at the bottom so you can read them for yourself. The program itself is going to be phased out in 2 years by 2020. But 2018 is essentially the end date. This is like the main end date. They're no longer accepting applications for the program, of course. And even though Trump is saying he's prioritizing criminals and all this other stuff, those ICE raids were going after some of anybody. So I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the work with Patreon. Thank you.